Excited to be here on the topic of transforming the way you work, how to become future ready. I'm excited to be able to share Mercer Consulting, Eightfold AI platform, how these two companies, these two firms assist and enable companies to become more future ready. So I'm Brian Fisher with Mercer. I'll be pulling from my experience as Mercer's global solution lead for skill frameworks. In this role, I'm regularly working with companies and consultants around the globe trying to advance into the new shape of work. And oftentimes this means employing skill-based practices. In addition to my experience, I'll be leveraging some of Mercer's latest research during this session. And I'm joined today by Andrea Shaw from Eightfold. Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself?
To be here to spend the next hour with you. My name is Andrea Shaw. I'm the head of talent strategy and innovation at Eightfold. I previously worked at American Express for 25 years. The last 2 years, I held the role of global talent acquisition leader, where I led a transformation. Part of my transformation was I implemented Eightfold. I saw how much Eightfold enhanced every aspect of the talent process and decided to join them. And so my role is to work with talent leaders, helping them understand how AI impacts their priorities, and also helping them talk about the implementation of Eightfold. So really excited to be here to talk more. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Brian.
Thanks. Thank you. Looking forward to this conversation. The research that I mentioned earlier that I'll be referencing throughout this session is from Mercer's Global Talent Trends. Now, you'll be receiving a sneak peek of sorts because the full study has not yet been released. Now, you're able to pre-register by clicking the link that will be shown in the chat function. Also, by following the website below, you can pre-register for the full report that will be available later in April. Now, in this study, we have nearly 1,000 C-suite executives, 1,700 HR professionals, and over 8,000 employee voices heard. And the responses, they represent a future where the business and people agendas are fused, a future that's demanding a reset of how we work at a fundamental level. And the good news is that the respondents, they view that their business and their workforce is more adaptable than before the pandemic. So this is really good news, and we're about to jump into it here. So overall, the central thesis of this year's study is the rise of the relatable organization. No longer is an organization just a representation of the services or products it sells, and no longer is a firm the sum total of their human workforce. Today, we welcome an age where organizations stand for what they value, they're judged by who they aspire to be, and are responsible for the people they touch inside and outside their organizations through the work they do and the employment they provide. What we learned is leading organizations are not taking this responsibility lightly. Those that are winning are striving to be ever more agile, relatable, and relevant in this changing world. All right, so let's look at some themes here. And so, our research indicates that the relatable organizations are really taking action in 5 areas, and these are our 5 global talent trends. First, they're resetting for relevance. So they're coming off mute on what they believe in and empowering the workforce to deliver on an agile and relevant work agenda. Second, they are working in partnership to create equitable, transparent, and rewarding relationships. Whether people work in a remote, a hybrid, gig, job share, or heck, future work models that maybe have yet to be conceived. Third, they are doing more than just advocating for total well-being. They're ensuring that they nudge people to take care of their mental, physical, social, and financial well-being. By doing this, they're ensuring that the benefits really deliver. Fourth, they recognize their vital role in building the workforce of the future. They're building skills-based organizations and actively planning pathways to prosperity to keep all workers employable. And finally, they're focused on harnessing the collective power of their people by ensuring people are bound by a common purpose and are able to bring their best self to work in a human-centric work environments. And of course, that's supported by relatable HR functions. Now today, I'm going to be pulling excerpts from the fourth trend, build for employability. But as I said, I do encourage you to pre-register to receive the full report, which will be available later in April. All right, so what did we learn in this study? Well, skills, well, they're at the top of the list for both executives and HR leaders. Executives see new and strengthened skill sets as the key to successful business transformation. And in addition, HR is prioritizing skill development as critical for the retention of key talent. Now, despite this prioritization activity in this space, there are significant skill gaps. So we do have to ask ourselves, are we doing enough to build the skills of the future? How can companies upskill and reskill with confidence, speed, and precision? And how can employees be incentivized to upskill and reskill for a brighter future? All right, so, as we know, as we commented, there is a gap. And so what we see on this page and in our research is a reflection of how companies are looking to close that gap. Now, here we see a shift. From 2020, where buying skills was the top means of closing the skills gap, to now, in 2022, employers say learning will be critical toward closing the skills gap. This is likely a result of increased competition for talent and employers recognizing that the talent with skills they need sometimes are not available, or quite frankly, they're too expensive. So there's a shift in mindset from buy to build. Now the question is do your supporting programs enable this shift? Are your pay programs incenting the development of skills of your workforce? Do the right employees have access to targeted learning opportunities? Do you have the mechanisms and processes in place to deploy this skilled talent to business needs? And how fluid is your workforce? And finally, does your culture support growth? It's about culture, right? Do you share talent across the business and geographic lines? Do you make it simple to grow with a consumer-grade employee experience? And so let's talk about how we are moving talent around. So the ability to move talent across the organizations. We see some mixed results. 84% of executives, this is good news, say the pandemic revealed some things to them, right? The not so good years, it's always good to be smarter than what you were before. But unfortunately, it revealed challenges in moving talent around the organization. In fact, HR leaders in developing countries are generally more likely to have a plan to have mobility offerings than developed countries. For example, developing countries are more likely to increase work from anywhere offerings at 51% versus developed countries at only 41%. On the bottom half of the slide, it's important to consider the employee's view of themselves. This is very important. Do they have a realistic understanding of how their skills fit in other parts of the business? Baby boomers generally have a less positive view than Gen Y. For instance, baby boomers, they're less likely to see where their skills fit into the organization, only 26% versus Gen Y, which is at 39%. And also, if we think about women and gender, women generally have a less positive view than men. For example, women are less likely to say they believe their skills fit in other parts of the business at 35% versus men at 39%. And so, let's take a different look at what's working and what's not. I understand there's a whole lot of information on all of these slides, and I do look forward to you really engaging and digesting in the full report. But let's take a different look at what's working and what's not. Organizations have made progress in upskilling and reskilling as employees are aware of what skills are relevant, what skills are at risk of becoming obsolete, and they feel their managers understand their skills, their interests, and their skill gaps more than in the past. Look at the percentages. It's pretty striking. If you look at the comparison between 2020 and 2022, from mid to low 60s to high 70s and low 80s. And although great strides have been made overall about employees feeling supported in their careers, and certainly that is the case overall, the results are inconsistent across generations and industries. For instance, Gen Y, they feel generally more supported in their careers than Gen Z and baby boomers. Also, sentiments can vary by industry. For instance, the industries that are generally more positive, well, they include tech, life sciences, financial services, energy, and chemicals, whereas those significantly less positive, automotive, healthcare, and retail, based on our study results. So, while sentiment and feeling supported has been on the rise, that skill gap still exists. So why is not enough being done? Our study suggests that HR's biggest concern is the retention of that newly skilled talent. Alongside is also the pace at which skills are changing and or becoming unpredictable, which HR is finding difficult to keep up with. On the other hand, employees indicate that learning and skilling sometimes is time-consuming and not well-resourced. In fact, 20% of employees do not see reskilling and upskilling as connected or relevant to promotions and opportunities in the organization. So what we've learned is successful skilling at scale, which is really what you need in order to close the skills gap. Well, it includes personalized learning pathways, which are frequently enabled by technology. And the learning includes a variety of approaches, including micro-learning, social and peer learning, and it must be incentivized. There has to be a payoff for the employee. Whether that's monetary or non-monetary, the worker must trust that the learning, well, it increases opportunity. Right? The old saying, is the juice worth the squeeze? And unfortunately, in this case, not all employees believe that and trust that. Now, as I close here, I did want to comment, and you heard me mention technology as an enabler for learning. But more broadly, the HR tech landscape is booming, and astute employers are benefiting. Now, we asked HR, how are they employing AI within their HR processes? Broadly speaking, AI is being applied to vast data sets, whether that's internal or external, that are available today. And there's plenty of data to be had. There's data from applicant tracking systems, from learning management systems, internal and external worker profiles, external job boards, the list goes on, right? But the key is to harness the power of that data for your needs. And so according to our study, the three fastest growing uses of AI, well, they are first, to track the changing demand and value of different skills. Oftentimes this is leading to supporting workforce planning efforts or maybe even pay for skill efforts. Number two, to improve talent management internally. So this frequently includes the nudges to employees to support career choices, or to leaders to support workers at key milestones or other moments that matter. Talent mobility today is being achieved by establishing AI-supported talent marketplaces. And then number three, organizations are adding talent intelligence to external hiring practices and their external hiring process, including redefining talent supply pools and improving the selection process through AI. Now, I acknowledge I'm probably speaking to the preaching to the choir here for those joining a session on the future and hosted by Eightfold and Mercer. While some still use artificial intelligence in future terms when discussing future plans, this data right here on the screen, well, this presents reality. The reality is that AI is here. It's present. And if you read this slide a different way and you look at the percentages of employers that are not using AI, you got to ask yourself, if you're not using AI across these HR processes by this time next year, the question is why not? So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over to Andrea to discuss Eightfold and how their platform can drive many of these HR processes that you see on the screen.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for sharing that. That's just so for the audience that's listening, this is hot off the presses, just some great insights on current trends. So I'm going to get us started in talking about skills insights and actually show you a few things. I want to talk a little bit about, kind of the power of skill intelligence. You'll see some things that are kind of what are the current trends that we're seeing based on the intelligence. And I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how you can solve for scaling the skills that you need to create a future-ready workforce. So excited to show this to you. But before I do, I want to quickly just set the stage and explain kind of where the data is coming from that you're going to be seeing. So Eightfold leverages over 1 billion data sets. So that's equivalent to half the world's workforce. And what we do is we have all the insights on skills as it relates to jobs. And we even have the insights on skills related to jobs in different companies, because sometimes similar jobs in different companies have different skill requirements. And then we can even see, comparisons geographically to understand kind of how skill demands differ. And finally, we can see the movement of people as they acquire skills. And so we can see kind of the ability to successfully acquire skills, and can even predict the potential of individuals with certain skills to acquire new skills. And so what Eightfold does is takes that data, we work with our customers, we integrate into their HR platform, and we bring all their data on candidates and employees to life. And therefore, they're able to kind of understand the skill sets and match them to the requirements that they have for jobs. So I want to just give that quick overview so that you have a sense of that before I dive into the data. So let's take a look at the data. So starting with some dramatic insights that you can get from the data, and this is, again, real data. Taking a look specifically, I'm going to take a look at two very different industries, just to give you a sense of kind of the insights you can get. So healthcare is one, the other is banking. And so you can see there'll be diverse industries, and you'll see kind of what the trends look like. So for this page, what you can see, this is specifically for healthcare. And you can take a look at skills penetration in general across healthcare roles. And what you can see, what the trend is saying is that there's a strong emergence of healthcare management and healthcare IT as some of the most penetrated skills. So I don't think this is a surprise to anybody that's in the industry, but it's great to be able to see trends of what's rising. And you can even see trends on what skills are declining. So customer service, Microsoft Office, strategic planning are declining skills. And you can see healthcare management, hospital operations, healthcare IT, and patient safety are rising skills. So it's amazing to be able to understand this for different industries or different roles in your industry. And here's a really great insight, too. Again, looking at the healthcare industry, what you're seeing is there's a really big changes that are happening, and the impact of digitization and automation is evident in the fastest growing skills. And we see this actually across every industry. So here, what you can see in the fastest growing skills, they're related to technology, with healthcare information technology. Data analysis is another very common emerging and rising skill. And then you can also see that there are skills that are declining, right? And what you see in this, too, is you can see how fast it's happening. On these charts, you can see over a 20-year period of time. You can see from 2000 to 2010, and then from 2010 to 2020. So you can see dramatic shifts that are coming about with regards to skills. Just take another lens on this. This is an interesting view on banking. So you can see there's 4 different categories of roles in the banking industry: the front office skills, middle and back office skills, IT operations skills, and business support skills. What you see is banks, a lot of the most prevalent skills are declining skills. So this is a really interesting statement. And then the skills that are emerging and really rising are less prevalent in the different organizations. And so most of the skills that you see across all 4 of these categories are either declining or stable, and the rising skills are less prevalent right now in the banking industry in general. Here's another insight you can get, too, in taking a look at skills. Again, looking at banking, we have the ability to compare a view of banks versus fintechs, and what does the distribution of skills look like. And this, I think, is pretty dramatic as a statement. But if you take a look at IT operations, those are roles and skills like software development, architecture, and security. What you see in the fintechs, that 55% of those skills, 55% of the skills are represented in technology type of skills. And you compare that to banks in general, you're seeing that 15%. So this kind of is a great insight to see kind of what are emerging skills, and also where certain companies fit relative to others. And what you can see here is for many of the banks, there's a little bit of catch-up that needs to happen in terms of being ready and future ready for a lot of the digital skills that are so important to the industry.
Yeah, and Andrea, if I might just comment, just kind of reflecting on what we learned in the research I shared before, with this mindset, the shift from buy to build, and also the theme that came through that was personalized, targeted learning. When I've worked with companies, the idea is, yes, organizations are spending more on reskilling efforts or learning and development efforts, but the difference is they're trying to be more targeted, right? So it's not we want opportunity for all, to learn, but if we understand more about, and I think you'll be getting into this, the employee potential and their skill sets and what they're potentially able to do, organizations are starting to be able to be more personalized, be more targeted in those reskilling efforts, and that really is the way you can effectively change your mindset from the buy model to the build model.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Brian. I mean, so as you can see up to this point of the discussion, and I have this insights on other industries also, it's a common theme of what's happening. We're in a really interesting time right now where there's a giant shift in terms of skill needs. Much of it is driven by technology. So you can see the demand for digitization across every function is really important. It drives cost efficiencies, it drives customer experience. And so that's a big driver of the shift. But we can also see in other industries, there's new technology that's emerging, that's shaping, telecom, that's shaping pharmaceutical companies. And that new technology is also shifting their skill demands. It's pretty dramatic. And so that's why it's really important to look at, how do you get future ready, and how do you do it at scale? Because if you look at these trends and how fast things are shifting, you really need to do this at scale. So that's a setup. As you can see, great insights that you can see on what's happening in the industry. So I want to quickly pivot to how do you do this at scale? And so, Brian, this is, I think, some of the things that you're just sharing. The three things I'm going to cover. One is, how do you upskill and reskill your current workforce, and how do you do that really effectively with skills intelligence? You can also automate your role requirements. And three, talk a little bit about potential and the big impact that can have, too, in terms of building skills. So let me start with upskilling and reskilling. Taking an example from the healthcare industry again, taking a look at a current role that is declining as a system administrator, and taking a look at a future role as a cloud engineer role, understanding the skills, specifically requirements for your different roles in your company, you can actually identify roles that have a high degree of skill overlap, right? And those roles could be declining roles. You can compare them to kind of rising and future roles. And where you have that big overlap is a great way to focus on reskilling, members of your organization whose roles are declining and preparing them for future roles. So that's a great win. It's a win-win for the company because you're building the skills you need for the future. It's a great win for your employees because you're helping them update their skill set to be really relevant for the future also. And then what you can see from an employee perspective, you give them very clear understanding about pathways, career pathways. I think everyone's talking about, this is a really important aspect right now for employee engagement and really trying to address the resignations that we're seeing across many industries. If you give people a pathway to develop their careers, that's a great engaging solution. And here's an example of how you can do that. You can take a look at system administrator role, which is a declining role, and you can take a look at the future-ready roles that have a lot of overlap. So I just showed you the overlap with cloud engineer, but also business systems consultant and DevOps engineer. And then they can understand very clearly, like, what type of skills do I need to build to help me prepare for these future roles. So this is a really powerful way to be really focused and really build the skills in your organization that you need at scale.
Yeah, and Andrea, as you're still talking about the system administrator, IT is a really good, technology areas, really good example of where some of this work, they've led the market in that function from the standpoint of doing this work and having a keen interest in doing this work for some time. Now, what most folks that you talk to that are in the learning and development teams or in the transformation teams within those technology functions, they know it's a lot of work. And right, so it's how this work has been done in the past, heavy amounts of interviews, desk audits, assessments, and then finally manicuring or curating learning pathways have been successful. But I do laugh when I think about the real big success stories in the past. It's been very difficult, very challenging, and really able to be done through sweat, hard work, and many times tears. And the real excitement about this is to being able to do this at scale without an army of HR professionals and business professionals diving in, but being able to get the head start through AI.
Yeah. I think the thing I'd add to that, Brian, is the other thing that AI provides is almost an ecosystem to really support your employees in these skill developments, right? So you can integrate the learning solutions that you have. They can very quickly link to training. We also have the ability to identify others in the organization that have these new skills required, and they can identify mentors, right, that are interested to be a mentor to others, to work with them. And then finally, there's another aspect of this, which is projects, right? We're able to also enable project assignments, or allow employees to sign up for projects in these new skill areas to help them, really develop. And so that gives them a whole ecosystem of support to help them in developing their careers. And I think that's so important from a engagement perspective.
Right.
So going on to the second area of being able to enabling the scale of the new skills, the future skills. So you can automate your skill requirements for roles, right? And this just gives you a view of what I shared earlier. This is specifically for credit risk managers, going back to the banking industry as an example. Credit risk managers, you have the ability to take a look at what are the top skills for the role. You can take a look at what's emerging, meaning what are the rising skills, what are the declining skills. You can take a look at a comparison of leading banks, or even certain corporations that have the most innovative roles, for example, in this situation, credit risk managers. And you can really vet, like, what do I need to drive my business results? Like, what's really going to make a difference based on what we're trying to accomplish? And oftentimes you're in different stages of maturity in terms of your role. So sometimes you're in an innovation stage, sometimes you're in a more mature, steady Eddie stage. And so it really needs to be customized to come what you're trying to drive with your business. But you can be very informed to make sure you're really selecting the right skills, and you can automate it, right? So today, a lot of times what happens is this happens organically, where you've got leaders in very different organizations and different locations just deciding what skills do I need. And oftentimes they're following what they traditionally do, the typical skills that they're looking for. And so if you really need to build skills for the future, this gives you a way to automate this globally. And I think that's really a powerful way to scale. Okay. And then the third point, I think this is a great insight I'd love to share with this group, because in the environment that we're in, I'm seeing this as something that our customers are leveraging a lot. And this is something we call adjacent skills. So what adjacent skills are basically skills. So what you see on this chart, on the left are bolded skills, and these are some of the top skills and emerging skills. What you see on the right are adjacent skills, and those adjacent skills are based on the information that we have and what we can see about people's ability to acquire new skills successfully. We can identify adjacent skills and predict with 95% accuracy their ability to be successful in acquiring the bold skill, right? And so we see this based on our data, but some of this is intuitive. I mean, you can take a look at this. You can understand, these are kind of cousins of the bolded top skills. And so what this does, and why a lot of our customers are starting to use adjacencies, is companies right now are really competing for the same skill sets, right? With the need for digital skills, right? Software engineers, data scientists, user experience. These are all very common, emerging, and rising skills that we're all competing for. And as a result, I'm sure a lot of people on this call can identify this. Oftentimes it's hard to find the talent. It's such a competitive environment right now. And so when you consider adjacencies, you can increase your pool of talent pretty significantly. So if you take a look at risk management, if you consider the adjacencies, your pool of talent increases 5.5 times, right? And so when you take a look externally, you can really grow your pool of talent, but you can also look internally. And I think what's really exciting about looking internally is that you have confidence. You're basically expressing confidence in your employees' ability to learn and learn the skills they need for the role. So I think this is a really exciting aspect of skills intelligence And the AI can actually make potential scientific, just because you see how much of it that happens successfully across a very large base of employees. So that's a summary. I just want to share of kind of skills intelligence. As you saw, you can see what the trends are, and then you can use those insights to really shape and automate and really deliver and drive kind of the skill growth that you need in your organization to be successful in the future. So with that, Brian, I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any questions that folks have in the audience. I think we can take some time to answer questions.
Sure. And actually, there was a question that came in that said, "Hey, can you share some of the skills HR professionals will need to be future ready?" Right. And so it was interesting as you were talking. I went to work I pulled up the Mercer Skills Library, which is a database that has skills associated with jobs, and just looked to see what some of the top results were. And obviously, you could think about some of the more technical HR specific skills were at the top of the list. But then when you looked at more enabling skills like problem solving, detail orientation, written communication, top notch. And then when I think about her question, and it talks about future ready. There's been a lot of really great studies, a lot of work. Some of our colleagues in Singapore did some wonderful research and programs around skills to build skills. So my point there is that learning orientation, the growth mindset is absolutely critical for HR professionals, because not only are you needing to flex your technical know-how within a discipline within HR, but more and more you're having integrated teams to solve employee and client solutions. And so you need to be able to grow and learn, and certainly that aspect of learning into having a digital acumen is becoming more and more important as well. So that was a great question, and as you know, that all great questions never have simple answers, because I just went on for about 5 minutes on it. But that would be my response. I don't see any other questions in queue at this time. Andrea, I mean, you spent significant amount of time with American Express within their HR function. I'm curious, do you have a different take or another take on what are some key skills for future HR professionals?
Yeah, so I don't have the analysis on that from our data. I think that's a great question, and actually that's something we'll have to look into and pull together. But I think I describe it as a very exciting time to be an HR professional. Just the past 2 years have been so many pivots that have had to happen, and it's been great because while it's been really busy, I understand organizations are probably exhausted in HR. It's really highlighted the importance of talent, and so what makes that really exciting, I think, what a lot of leaders are realizing that we've underinvested, right, in talent, and so now they're realizing with some of the challenges that organizations are facing that there needs to be a different way, and there needs to be investment in talent. We're seeing that across many industry leaders that we're talking to, and so I find that very exciting because it's so important. I think everybody in the HR space knows how important this is, that it's good to be getting this attention and the recognition that there's a need to drive improvements and to really take something that is very manual and leverage new technology like AI and also automation. So that's really exciting. But this is a really long answer to your question, Brian. The thing with all that is it's a new era in HR, right? So to lead transformation, we're seeing a lot of growth in terms of project management skills, right? Because you got to lead the implementation across many cross-HR teams and the technology teams. And so we are seeing a lot around project management skills. Change management is another big area. I think everyone realizes, one of the big requirements to drive transformation is to have a very clear focus on change management. So that's what I would say from my experience in looking at kind of what's happening, but definitely we'll take that follow-up to understand more and take a look at the analysis within Eightfold.
Yeah, and there was a comment about data literacy, and for sure, think about the conversation we've had over the last 40 minutes. So much of it is data oriented in gaining value and insights from data itself. I do have a question, a relatively technical question, so or at least it's beyond my technical expertise. So the question is just Eightfold as a platform. Maybe speak broadly about its connection points, and it was referenced specifically about application tracking systems, but maybe more broadly around just the connection of other systems.
Yeah, so I was sharing earlier, Eightfold, I mean, one of the biggest challenges that HR leaders have today is we have data all over the place. And it's very manual, to get access to that data. So what Eightfold does is we kind of sit on top of the different HR platforms out there. So ATS platforms for talent acquisition, and just we have the ability to bring all that data that you have on employees or candidates to life with the intelligence we have, from the marketplace. And so what ends up happening is all of a sudden your ATS platform, you can now source from it, right? So all that data that you have on your applicants is updated and able to be sourced and matched to roles, which is one of the most powerful things. I know one of our customers that I just spoke with the other day said in the past year, they actually had 42% of their hires come from their ATS platform. That's like rediscovering talent that's already applied. So to get to your question, it sits on top of your HR platforms, and it just brings the data to life. So that's kind of how it's integrated, and that's kind of how it interacts.
That's really powerful. Thinking about that client of yours that it's been amazed when they compare the past to the current. Now you being able to use a powerful platform like that. And I think it goes into another question that's popped up is we love the capability that these platforms can deliver, but sometimes it's difficult to get the buy-in for the need or the value of such a platform. Can you talk about any recommendations on getting that leadership buy-in?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I know I had my own personal experience, but I'm also talking to a lot of other talent leaders about this exact same thing. And I think it really depends on kind of what is the hot buttons, of the organization. Like, what is the need that's critical? So some organizations we work with, and they want to see the business case. They want to make sure that the business case makes a lot of sense, which we provide them. I think there's a lot of efficiencies that the AI and automation deliver. So there's some organizations just want to know that, there's a strong business case. There's other organizations that really are in the mode of transforming, right, their talent. And so they are really concerned about the ability to bring on board new talent and new skills. And so when you're looking at that, you're really kind of talking about how you can be targeted and what the candidate experience is like too, right? So, so I think my answer is it depends, right? It depends on the leaders, kind of what the big priorities are. I also see a lot of organizations really very much prioritizing diversity, wanting to build diversity in their organization. And so AI and the automation really helps to do that. So it just depends, like, what's important to your organization based on their talent journey to make sure you connect with it. I think the great news about kind of the AI and the solution is it affects all those outcomes, right? If the interest is about experience, we definitely improve the experience of every stakeholder, recruiters, hiring leaders, employees, and candidates. If it's about efficiency, we have both great efficiency impact on recruiters and their time, and cost efficiencies too, and time to fill efficiencies. So we've got lots of results that we've seen from our customers. And then the last I would say is quality. When I talk about results, quality, efficiency, and experience are really the three buckets I usually like to talk about. But quality too. I mean, right, with the matching, it's really kind of defining what quality looks like and then finding the candidates that match. So that's the way we usually talk about it. We cover, fortunately, in all those fronts, but I think different companies and organizations are looking for different things based on what their priorities are. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, good question, good answer there. And there's obviously opportunities to, what's interesting when I talk to companies, and they say, where do I get started? Like, where do I get started with implementing skill-based practices? And oftentimes the answer is, like, start somewhere, right? You mentioned it. Where is there a business need? Where is there maybe not a business unit, maybe just a team, right, that you can get smarter about and understanding what skills are driving success, and then what programs, what processes you can upgrade through the use of skills. And obviously, when you think about that at a micro level, that you may be able to do with, again, sweat and tears, when you start to scale that, that's when a technology like Eightfold really comes to bear and has a lot of value.
I think so. When I launched Eightfold at American Express, I was amazed at how many new things we were able to do that made a big difference. And so when I joined Eightfold, I really spent a lot of time, was like, what was it that was so powerful? And it really is the skills intelligence. I think that's really the building blocks for all talent priorities. And it affects every step of the talent process, right? If you have the ability to define what skills you need to build or you need for a certain role, and you have the ability to identify those skills with candidates or employees, like everything kind of comes together from every part of the talent process, whether it's acquiring talent, like the buying new talent. If you really want to find new talent, it's really effective to do that. And it's also effective in building talent within your organization. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the heart of what I think is the difference maker. I think the watch out to the question you were just raising about where to start is, think about the big picture. Because I think oftentimes if we're seeing a lot of our customers who will choose a point solution, it's less expensive, it solves a very specific need. But then if you step back and look at some of the data I just shared in terms of where you need to move as an organization and building skills to be competitive, just make sure you step back and take a look at that big picture, because it all needs to knit together to have the big impact on the long term. And I think that to me is like a really important call out for anyone that's looking at transformation.
Yeah, exactly. And my focus at Mercer is the broad skills conversations. And if you think about what skills are doing, it's really delivering the career framework 2.0s that we talked about 15, 10, and 5 years ago. And in those conversations way back when, technology was always an important thing to address and to talk about, but it oftentimes wasn't the driver of the conversation. And now more and more, in that first conversation about what, how are you going to establish skills as the currency of work and drive process, in that same first conversation, you have to reflect on what does my HR technology roadmap look like, and what does it need to look like? Because you can't have the people strategy without the technology strategy working together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm looking at questions, and we have a question in here now that's popped up about sources of data, multiple sources of data, and I think I'll comment. It says, how do you support multiple sources of skills data, skills library. And I'll go ahead and comment, Andrea, and you can chime in. And I'm gonna put it in an eightfold context. In that new technology within eightfold with the job intelligence engine allows for the combination, review, and refinement of whether it's skills data, other job content, worker content. It allows you to refine that in that job intelligence engine. And therefore, if I'm, director of talent, and I know that these 12 skills we need on these jobs, regardless of whether the AI tells us or not, which I think it would tell us that, but let's say that regardless of what it says, now through the platform, you're able to have that combination of governance from maybe other skills data sources or business directives. Marry that with the power of AI, and you really have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think we find a lot of organizations have done some work already thinking about this, right? Because it's such an important topic. Like, what are the priority skills that we need for different roles, and created some standardization. But to your point, Brian, it's changing so quickly. It's incredible. And it's consistent across every industry that 5 years, actually within a 5-year window, things are even changing. If you look at the emerging skills, they're changing in 5-year increments. And 5 years is like nothing. You're starting to change as soon as you define it. So I agree with you. I think having the AI makes sure that you're current, especially in this environment that we're in right now across all industries, for sure.
Yep. I have a couple other questions about supporting multiple applications, and feel free to take a look at that. I think that we've addressed it to some extent. I also know there's some questions that are easier to articulate verbally, or a greater conversation we could have on a one-on-one basis. So I guess my question to you, Andrea, would be, if we didn't fully answer questions in this session, as we're kind of running up on time, or if you wanted to learn more, how best should we do that, or how would they get those answers?
I mean, I think, we have our contact information here. So for Eightfold specifically, here's information for you to reach out, to Eightfold in general, or feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, and I definitely, after several webinars that I've done, have connected with folks to be able to tell them more about what's happening and how Eightfold works, or understand more about kind of what they're trying to tackle. So that's with regards to Eightfold, and I guess I would ask you the same, Brian.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Also, probably, I'm sure that the excerpts from Trend 4 within the broader global talent trends may have whet your appetite for more data, and if so, hit the chat function, had the website to be able to pre-register to receive the full to see the full results. And if you want to talk about those full results, reach out to me or your local Mercer consultant, and we'd be happy to have that conversation, answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, and what I'd say about this data, I mean, there's just so much happening now. I think there's the research, not the data. We're talking so much about data, but about the research insights that Mercer has done. I think it's going to give you a lot of great intelligence, because things are shifting and moving so quickly. And if you want to approach your leadership and make the case, I think there's a lot of great insights there to share about kind of the trends and kind of how people are feeling. So definitely I think that's a great resource, and obviously hot off the presses, so it's very current too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The business case that we just talked about earlier, I have to admit, when I was on the corporate side, I remember the previous version. I think it was the 2016, it may have been the 2018 version of Global Talent Trends. I remember when it came off, I souped up those PowerPoint slides that I've been trying to convince folks on why we need to change. I was able to, strengthen those with stats from the survey. So I encourage others to do the same. Any parting words?
So the last thing I would love to tell everyone about, I know people are hungry for information and want to understand, and this is a lot to understand. Definitely can't get to it in the hour that we have. I would like to recommend Eightfold has our premier annual event happening on May 10th and 11th. It's no cost to join. It's a hybrid event, so you can join it virtually, and we call it Cultivate 2022. It's a really great event. You'll find that we've got industry leaders, HR executives, and experts that are joining, including some of our senior leaders that are our customers. And so you get lots of insights. Go if you want to take a look more at the agenda, you'll see we've got some very prestigious individuals joining us. But take a look at the site. It's definitely worth your time. If you want to find out more, and I know how busy everybody in the talent space is right now, this is good use of your time. And take a look at the agenda. You'll see the speakers. I think you'll be really impressed. A great way to learn more.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you for allowing me and Mercer to come and present some new data and also to share some of our experiences. And so thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And with that, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
Great.
Thank you.